Welcome to Auntie Kay's Tarot, your favorite radical queer indigenous auntie, bringing you tarot every day. Hello everyone and welcome to Auntie Kay's Tarot. So 5 things I wish I knew when I first got into tarot. And let's address the obvious. Okay. A bigger aquarium. There is even a quarantine aquarium now, so that as new fish are slowly added to this tank, we can do the quarantine process, learning so much stuff. I said to the person who started this, I was like, you had to know what I would be like when you gave me a pet that I knew nothing about and then discovered I needed to know a whole bunch of shit about. And she was like, yeah, I figured you'd either be into it and in a month you would be able to teach me everything I hadn't been able to learn in the past year or two. But if I told you up front, you'd say no. And I was like, yeah. So things are going good, and we're gonna work on this and plan ahead for what we're doing after this. So things are coming together, but this is going to take a while. We're going to be adding fish slowly. Okay, let us get to 5 things I wish I knew before when I started tarot. Not really before, when I started. And so there's also going to be a bonus. So my 5, actually 6 things reflect my experience. And you will really see this with 2 of my choices, and they might surprise you. So I invite others to come join, do a VR, or put something in the comment. What are your 5 or 6 things? All right. Number 1, I wish I knew when I got started was indie decks. And Next World Tarot is really like a kind of indie deck, not fully indie, but this is a deck where I discovered there were indie decks to varying degrees, and it was what I wanted in a tarot deck. And I was like blown away, absolutely blown away by this deck. And this deck helped me be like, oh, I feel that passion for tarot that my teachers knew I would have, felt I would have, and I was like, y'all, you're wrong. I don't think it's really, the thing I'm going to be passionate about. And, I kept buying decks and trying. But then this deck, and I even tried making my own decks, which is going to end up being an aspect of one of my things, a few times, and not being able to figure out how to do that. And then this, and it was what I needed. So there you go. Okay. I wish I knew multiple ways to practice. Where I learned tarot from, the person who taught me tarot, ways to practice. I had the benefit of being taught tarot, but nobody really talked about how I was going to practice. Practice at home, practice on your own, it was all real world practice, practice on yourself. And I wish I had other ways to practice, because there were times where I'm like, I want to practice, but I don't want to sit here right now and ask this many questions about myself, because it does not feel useful or educational or blah 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 blah. And because I already knew enough about divination to be like, this isn't working for me, and it's definitely different than, you know, studying my own astrology chart to learn astrology. Learning aspects of your personality is very different than, you know, practicing fortune telling on yourself and if, you know, this person likes you back. And I wish I knew other ways to practice. I ended up figuring that out on my own, but I wish there'd been more different ideas talked to me about how I could practice. And one thing I have is the Tarot Playbook. And there's also a book out there that gives you a whole bunch of questions where it's just practice questions. And I also have other ways where I practice cards. But these are things I wish I knew at the beginning, so I wasn't trying to read for myself all the time. Also, read for your friends, even if you need to use a guidebook and look up the cards. Practice for your friends. Practice reading for a TV show you're watching. What's going to happen at the end of the show? How's it going to work out? Those sorts of things are different ways that you can practice. I also just put the cards in a pile, turn over, 3 cards. Do they like me back? Read the cards. Will I get the job? Read the cards. And it's not actually a question about me that I'm asking. They're practice questions. I tell Spirit it's practice questions, and that I'm not receiving messages from that. Okay. Guidebooks. I am over the moon thankful to a Spirit that I was gifted the opportunity to learn from an in-person teacher and have that in-person teacher. But I'm also a book person, and I would have loved a guidebook. There was some out there before I discovered them. It wasn't new. I just didn't have the same access, and online shopping wasn't the same. Speaking of which, there was the first time I ordered a deck online, it was a mass market deck, and it said a guidebook, and I was like, amazing, that's what I want. And it was actually just the little white book, but the little white book had an intro that made it all seem like some tarot reader was giving me this great insightful information, but it was just like a special tiny intro in the little white book and then typical little white book information, and I was really disappointed. So I wish I knew about guidebooks sooner. I'm over guidebooks now. I'm bored by them. Personally, I'm really thankful they're out there so that other people get to find them when they need them, and hopefully sooner than I did in my journey. Okay. Print on demand. And instructions on how to do it that were easy to use, because forever, the only thing I used YouTube for was music videos. Because I'm MTV Generation X, but I didn't get to have MTV or much music because I didn't have cable. So that's why I used YouTube. for years, up until probably about 2015, 16, 17, I started branching out more with YouTube. Probably more like 17. Yeah, like, so print on demand and how to use them. I tried making a deck many times before this deck, and I didn't finish because I didn't know how to go about making it happen. And I wanted to have a deck that worked for me because I disliked the art in the decks that I had, which is why I was so excited to find there was other options. There was indie options. If you don't know about it, check out Kickstarter and BackerKit and Etsy and go look for indie tarot decks now. All right. 5. We're at number 5. Wider tarot community. Those of you who've been following me for a while know that I have in-person tarot friends, and many people wish they had in-person tarot friends, and I've always had in-person tarot friends. That's how I learned tarot. But meeting a wider tarot community, which I was afraid to do because of all the cultural appropriation Karens out there, but finding the wider community and discovering that it's not just a bunch of white people waving sage around everywhere, but, you know, beyond the stereotypes. I'm very thankful to have found that, because learning from my friends was its own echo chamber, and learning from a wider tarot community, other ideas and other ways of seeing things has been wonderful and enriching, in my opinion. Okay, and my bonus, number 6, collecting tarot decks. I wish I knew about that sooner. I knew a couple people who had maybe like 3 or 4 decks, and was like, wow, 3 or 4 decks, holy cow. And it was 2019, the end of 2019, when I met somebody who had like 15 tarot decks. I was like, holy shit. And then she got me a deck, which was the Star Spinner Tarot. And, you know, that was after I had this. And she also directed me where to find online, and blew my mind. And tarot collecting. And why do I wish I'd learned tarot collecting sooner? Because I would have connected to tarot sooner. Like, both print on demand and collecting would have increased my connection to tarot sooner, because collecting, all the pieces of information you gather when you collect to know what you're collecting inside and out, is totally how I learn. Example. Once I discovered there was a gazillion amounts of information I hadn't learned that I should have learned, that's what hooked me with the fish. That, and it was mesmerizing and calming. But the amount of information I could feed my brain also. If I had understood that I could, in the other way my brain learns beyond like collecting information is artistically. Like when I started gathering information on this, and still am, I'm drawing out what fishes I want, aquarium, plants, all the stuff, charting things, because that's how I learn. And the connection of art and creating, as well as collecting, it's how my brain works. And so I wish I knew those things existed sooner. So those are my 5 or 6 things I wish I knew at the beginning of my tarot journey. See y'all later, folks.